Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunworks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Gunworks Long Range Pursuit Podcast. And today Ian and I are here, and we've hardly seen each other this fall. I mean, we work together every day in the summer, and I feel like I haven't seen you in like 2 or 3 months because we've just been so busy, traveling, doing different events, doing our own hunts. So yeah, we've both had a pretty awesome fall. So
yeah, it's,
we'll get into it.
It has been heavy, and you were gone for 2 weeks at one point, going up to Alaska, right?
Yeah. I went up to Alaska for 2 weeks,
and you were hunting moose.
Yeah.
So let's first just go right into that.
Yeah. So my dad still lives up on the Brooks Range up in northern Alaska. Yeah, and he's 80, and he goes moose hunting every year. And he's going to go moose hunting whether I go with him or not. But he's old enough that I'm like, man, he needs the help.
Sure.
He doesn't really need the help, but I feel much better if I'm there to help him, put it that way.
Yeah.
So went up there in September, and I feel real fortunate the way it turned out because, he's just hunting for meat, so he could care less about antler size. And so for me to legally shoot a moose up there, it has to be over 50 inches wide or have more than 4 brow tines.
As a non-resident.
Yeah, as a non-resident.
Okay, yeah.
For him to shoot a moose, it just has to be a bull.
Huh.
So anything with the tiniest little antler sticking out, is fair game for him. And logistically, we can only handle one moose, and we're not going to take that risk that he goes without meat because we're being picky and looking for a big moose for me.
Sure.
So, I go up there knowing that.
And did you went 2 years ago?
I went 2 years ago, but I was grizzly hunting that time.
Okay. But he shot a moose, didn't he?
Yeah, he shot a moose that year.
So is it a thing, though, that it's like every 2 years he shoots another moose type of thing, or
every year?
Every year. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry if you said that. I missed it.
Yeah, no, he got one on his own last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
But now, so flew up there in September, and kind of where he lives there is kind of down in the flats. And you'll get cow moose down there, but there's not a lot of bulls. And it's just such flat country that they're very difficult to find. And if you just go out there blind calling, the population density isn't nearly high enough. The population density isn't really high enough to have much success. So, we always, basically take a canoe with an outboard engine on it, and run it about 50 miles upriver. And, it's about 20 real miles, but, 50 river miles like this.
Yeah.
And, that gets you up in the southern side of the Brooks Range.
So you're going 50 miles in a canoe.
Yeah.
With a little motor on the back of that thing.
Yeah, horse.
Just a huge canoe. Like, how the heck does it carry all your gear and stuff?
It's an 18-foot, Grumman is probably about, I don't know, I think they're probably about 36 inches wide at the widest point.
50 miles.
Yeah. So it's about an 8-hour day to get upriver.
Holy
cow. And get to where we camp.
Yeah.
And, so first day we ran upriver, we got set up, we camped, and then, kind of where we've chosen to camp up there, my dad knows the country pretty well. It's kind of the intersection of a couple main valleys, because what you'll get during the rut is you get the bulls coming out of the mountains where they spent the summer and kind of coming down into the valleys and heading south out towards the flats because that's where the majority of the cows are. So you're really on a bit of a travel route. So the place that he's kind of picked that he likes to camp is along this travel route. And I mean, last year he literally shot a moose across the river from his tent.
Oh, yeah.
So pretty much every morning we have the same routine. We climb about 500 feet up on the hill on the other side of the river. And we did this for, 5 days, and a couple times it happened where there'd be a bull coming down the river, and there's not a lot of openings. You're glassing the same little swamps and the same little openings, but there's a lot of timber, so you'd either hear him down below you, grunting, or you get a glimpse of them, and then we drop down off the hill and we try to intercept them. We try to call them back, and we kind of got to the point where we always felt like we were behind them.
Sure.
We kind of came to the conclusion that although it's nice to be sitting up on the hill where you can glass and there's something to do to entertain yourself, we're really just better off sitting on a piece of river and just sitting there waiting for someone to cross because they kind of have to cross the river there.
Mm.
And
I'm trying to just get a picture of this too. So is it like... So kind of swampy stuff, but you're on the river. Are you wearing like waders and stuff? Is that what you guys are wearing out there? Because it's all swampy stuff.
Yeah. You literally live in hip boots.
Yeah.
And weather was pretty decent. It rained on and off every day, but in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty dry for Alaska.
So not snowing or anything.
Yeah, it wasn't snowing. Wasn't that? I mean, it was in the high 30s. it froze a couple nights a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't until the end that we started seeing snow on the mountains and stuff like that.
Sure. Okay, so you moved down to the river. Now you're gonna ambush is the next plan.
Yeah, so we just kind of came to that conclusion. It's like, we're going to have to sit on the river because we're behind everything that goes past us. And so probably about, on the 5th day, probably about noon, I saw the first decent-sized bull that we'd seen, cross the river down below us. And I hustled down there, tried to cut him off, tried to get in front of him, kind of got off in this swampy, brushy country and tried cow calling him back and sat there for like an hour and nothing. So kind of assumed that he kept going. Mm-hmm. And so we decided we're going to drop down to the river for the last couple hours of the day before dark and just sit there. And so we find a spot. We're kind of at the outside of a bend. And so I can literally see 600 yards this way and 600 yards this way. And it's probably 150 yards across the river and across the sandbar to the timber on the other side.
So you are this is where they're going to cross because you can't see much.
Yeah, you can't see that much, but it's a very good cross. It kind of channelizes and it's a very good crossing area.
Yeah. Okay.
And, literally we'd figured out from the last couple of days that had we just been sitting there, we probably would have killed like 3 moose already. But fortunately we didn't figure it out because they're all small ones.
Yeah.
But my dad would have shot them and we'd have been done.
Yeah.
And so, so anyway, we dropped down there, and my dad had heard one while I was off chasing this other bull. My dad had heard one across the river, hanging out in the timber, grunting occasionally. So we get down there, we're set up. I get my tripod set up, so I can shoot, like 600 yards in either direction. And we're sitting directly underneath this cut bank. So this cut bank goes up there's literally like a strip of gravel about, 6 or 8 feet wide between where we're sitting, or the cut bank, and the edge of the river. And the river is like immediately 10 feet deep, right off the edge. We got this cut bank behind us that's probably 10 or 12 feet tall. And we're sitting there, and my dad had been cow calling occasionally. Like an hour later, we hear a couple grunts, and me and my dad both look at each other. We're like, is that behind us? And we're like, that is behind us. And so sure enough, we both kind of stand up and start, looking back at this really steep up angle. And I can see this tree that's probably like 15 feet back from the edge just getting thrashed. He's just thrashing it with his antlers, and we're like, oh, here he comes. And boy, he came out and he popped out on that riverbank, like almost directly above me at like 4 yards, and it's just like, I saw white antlers. And so in my mind, I'm like, he's big enough to shoot, and bam, I hammered him
at 4
yards.
Yeah. I remember when you first texted something saying 4 yards, I was like, that must be a typo. He meant 400.
Yeah, no, it was 4 yards.
Yeah.
And probably about a 45-degree up angle.
Man.
And fortunately he just dropped, and bullet had gone in the chest, but because of the angle, gone up and hit his spine, kind of like up in front of his tenderloins.
Mm-hmm.
And he just dropped, but he's literally as soon as I shot, I literally scrambled off to the side because I thought he was going to roll off the bank and almost land on me.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of kicking a little bit still. And there's one little sapling that's in the middle of his back that's kind of keeping his whole body from coming off the bank, and ended up in the water.
Yeah.
And so he's sitting there kicking, and his back is to the riverbank. So all I can see is his back. And I don't want him to kick anymore because I don't want him to end up in the river.
Yep.
And so I pick a spot on the back of his neck, and shot him in the back of the neck, and that kind of quieted him down and finished him off. But I kind of failed to I underestimated how far back his skull goes behind his ears.
Oh.
So I kind of blew up the back of his skull a little bit. So
okay.
We'll see how the European mount comes out.
Yeah, heck.
But,
well, with something coming up that close, did you, because it was so unexpected, I know you usually run your power pretty low anyway, but did you crank that sucker down, or is it so quick you just turned and?
No, and that was actually one of the keys is, fortunately, I was probably set at, 12 or 15 power when I was looking across the river, as I immediately cranked that thing all the way down to, 3.5, whatever the lowest power is on that.
Yeah.
And without that, with that post reticle we put in the Leopold scopes, it just kind of gave me that really quick reference point at 3 power where I could actually see more than just a little patch of hair on him. I could actually see a moose, and just put that post, basically right in the middle of his chest.
So you used that post?
Yeah, I used the post. I mean, I kind of barely remember seeing that post.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I came up on him.
Yeah. See, and that's interesting because like it's just routine's the wrong word, but part of the process, when something's close, I crank my power down.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot in when we're hunting with some of the customers or students or whatnot, or even just our close targets at the range.
Yeah.
That's not their first instinct. Their first instinct is to try and find it through the scope.
Yeah.
With whatever power they're on.
Yeah.
When, you've had enough experience, and that comes with just shooting a lot.
Yes.
I know I got to crank that thing down right away.
And probably making that mistake a couple times, and eventually it sinks into my brain that I really need to, carry this thing around at 3.5 power and only turn the power up when I need to, versus carrying it at high power and trying to turn it down when you need to really quickly.
Sure. Yeah. And I've even seen guys in the moment of panic grab like their parallax knob to turn their power down. Or, like they're grabbing for weird spots on their scope.
Yeah.
Just from lack of experience of just
trying to find something.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So you smack this thing. He's dead now. And now you got to climb up this bank and.
Yeah. So we had to kind of go around this little ravine where we could get up the bank, 30, 40 yards away, but probably the other piece of gear, and my dad's learned this himself because he hunts moose by himself at 80 years old, is he always has a come along with him. And literally that's how he quarters them. He'll use the come along and attach it to a leg and pull the leg back, and then it's a long process. But in this case, the moment we got up to him, like his head had already fallen off the bank, and it's literally just this little tree keeping the whole body from following.
Yeah.
So first thing we did is throw a rope around his antler, tie it to a tree, then use the come along to kind of pull his head back up on the bank. And you guys will see some pictures here. If you're watching the video, we got a couple pictures that'll be in here. If you're just listening to this podcast, then I apologize. I'll do my best to kind of paint that word picture for you. But so we took a couple pictures, but then without that come along, it literally would have been impossible to quarter him, because his back was to the bank and his back was literally at the edge of the bank. So to quarter him, you need to get on the other side of him and be able to pull that leg backwards to quarter him. So with the come along and a bit of work, we were able to pull the whole moose probably 10 feet away from the bank.
Yeah,
which gave us that room to work to quarter them. So,
yeah.
That was one lesson I learned, is like, man, when you're hunting moose and these big animals like that, and probably potentially even elk out of a vehicle or out of a side-by-side where you're not cutting weight a lot, that come along can be really valuable, especially if you're by yourself.
Yeah. You can't exactly put a winch onto a canoe and from there. Yeah. Dang. Yeah, that's wild. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
But interesting. Done it enough times in big freaking animals in Alaska.
Yeah.
Your dad packs that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's just part of his gear.
How long does it take to break down a moose then?
It probably took us,
with two guys that have been doing it for a while.
Yeah. It probably took us about 2 hours, I'd say, to get him broken down.
Okay.
Yeah. We're kind of taking our time, and there was really no rush. It was starting to get dark when we finished. The bears up there are a bit better behaved than they are down here. So
yeah,
I don't think we feel quite that urgency to hurry up like we do here.
Sure. And then you're throwing these in game bags and throwing them into the canoe, and you make one trip back, or?
Yeah. So what we did is, it got dark, so we just left him there overnight. Went, half a mile upriver to our camp.
Okay.
And then the next morning came down, literally the easiest pack out ever. Because all they did was tie a rope around each quarter and then run that rope around a tree for a break, and then lower that quarter down the bank where my dad was below, and he'd guide it to the ground and then pick it up and carry it 10 feet to the canoe and set it in.
Heck yeah.
But once you load a whole moose in a canoe, there's no room left for camp or anything else. So once we got them loaded up, we made the 8-hour trip downriver, maybe a little less than 8 hours because you're going with the current, to get that moose, back to town. Spent the night in town, then spent another day coming back up to camp, and my dad was kind of hoping we get a grizzly bear on the kill, because he had a grizzly bear tag, but it never happened.
Yeah.
But, when we broke down camp and then, spent another day, taking camp back down to town. So
you expected that it would take 2 trips no matter, like if you killed something.
Yeah. We knew if we killed something.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why logistically, really, we could only handle one moose, because that adds 2 more days of hauling.
Yeah.
And just logistically, it's pretty difficult.
So how did you decide if, who's going to shoot? Just whoever had the opportunity? How did you decide that?
I mean, pretty much like if my dad had the opportunity to shoot a moose that was legal for him, he was going to shoot it.
Yep.
And then if there was a moose that was big enough for me to be legal to shoot, then I was going to shoot it.
And he'd keep the meat, or?
Yeah. And then Yeah, he's going to keep the meat regardless.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and that moose ended up being 55 inches.
Yeah.
You know, so not a monster, but, you know, a good representative of moose. And I'll probably put him up on my garage because he's big enough that he's obviously not a Wyoming moose.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no place in my house big enough for him. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I mean, I think my wife's a little nervous
yeah.
where those antlers are going to end up.
That, yeah. Well, that's awesome. I can't imagine. I'm naive to all this. I've never been up to Alaska, but I can't imagine how big a moose is, and packing that thing in a canoe and 2 grown men and a moose floating down in a canoe.
Yeah.
That sounds freaking scary.
Yeah. Well, you know, and the other thing that was interesting that I had never personally done myself was traveling with those antlers on the airlines.
Oh.
You know, and so I was flying on Alaska, and Alaska Airlines may be a bit better than some of them at doing this, but it was actually really easy, you know, because it's basically just their oversized baggage. And so if you look at their regulations for Alaska Airlines, it just says you have to remove meat, make sure there's no blood, you know. So I literally just skinned the head, removed the brain, cut off the lower jaw, and like all the excess, you know, flesh without actually boiling it and getting every ounce off, but just did a pretty good job about cutting all the meat off the head.
Mm-hmm.
And then taped that up in a couple of garbage bags so there's no way that any blood could escape. And then just cut off little pieces of cardboard and taped a little piece of cardboard onto each tip of the antler, you know, so the antlers are all, you know, dulled up so they're not sharp.
Sure. Oh, okay.
And just put them on a luggage cart and wheeled it up there and got it as oversized baggage when I got back to Billings.
Like that humble brag of dragging that thing into the airport.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. That's like I went down to I can't remember what it was, but somewhere downtown Cody, and we went in to go get some for supper. And what was sitting there was a tundra with a mountain lion dead on the top of the rack. It's like,
perfect.
That guy came straight from shooting that to the bar and showing that thing off on Main Street. Man, that's funny. You can't be a gray man when you're carrying a freaking moose head home with you.
Yeah, that would probably been a little more entertaining if this had happened 10 years ago in my old life when I was flying into Los Angeles. I think that might have been a little more interesting in baggage claim there than it was in Billings because they're kind of used to that stuff.
Yeah. I would imagine Alaska Airlines probably used to some of that.
Yeah, they were really easy to work with on that. So
yeah,
that was a big question in my mind is like, how am I gonna get antlers out of there? You know, so now having done that, it's very simple.
Yeah, awesome, man. Okay, so it was just the moose this year because I remember you did moose and grizzly 2 years ago.
Yeah, well, actually 2 years ago, my dad shot the moose.
Yeah,
shot the grizzly.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Same with the grizzly skull. Were you able to just bag that thing up and bring it back?
I literally just wrapped that thing up in duct tape in a plastic bag and put it in my check bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I literally didn't even say anything about it. I just put it in my check bag.
Yeah. Oh.
Had it taped up real good.
Yeah. And I mean, listeners probably, there's a lot of guys who've flown with meat and done this before. I have not. But it's dang simple listening to guys. Like my buddy just did it with an antelope that he shot, and we're just like, oh, let's look up some stuff real quick, and it was like, just put it in a cooler, and you can't have a soggy wet cooler. You just throw fresh ice in it and you're good to go, and it's like a check bag. I don't remember what it was, $50 or something, and they duct taped the cooler shut was all.
I think I got charged like $200 on the oversized baggage.
Oh, okay.
For those antlers, something like $200 or something like that.
Yeah.
But not nearly as bad as I was anticipating it might be.
Yeah. Dang. Well, you brought your Gunworks rifle, I'm guessing.
Oh,
30 NOS.
Had 30 NOS. Yeah.
And that thing, you really had to put it to use at 4 yards.
Yeah. That's definitely took advantage of those 1,000-yard capability of that gun. That's what I love about it, though, is it's kind of it's like you got to be ready for any opportunity.
Yeah.
So to handle the close stuff, be able to handle the far stuff, it's just that perfect all around, does everything well. That Magnus and the 30 NOS were built. For me, for Alaska, that's like, it does everything well.
Yeah, for sure. You don't need a gun for every animal that you're going to shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get home and then right away you went on your own personal antelope thing. I mean, like, it wasn't this big trip because it was right here.
No, yeah.
But it was before and after work type stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I had the only tag I drew this year that was, had any draw odds at all was an antelope tag, which I think for residents was like a 50% draw odds or something. Yeah. And I had a frustrating archery season, so that's a story for another day. But so when the rifle season opened up, and I'd just been so busy and just coming back from Alaska, and the season had been open for a good portion of the time I was in Alaska, so I went out on a Saturday, and the kind of I went out on kind of the main public area, like the main swaths of BLM land, where usually you'll see herds of antelope, and I didn't see a single antelope. I counted like 5 pickup trucks in the first hour,
Oh yeah.
from a glassing point, and I'm like, okay, I got to do something different. So the other side of the unit is kind of a patchwork of BLM and private, and if you're willing to park, and basically navigate, this BLM to this state land to circumvent this private, then cross over to BLM again, from the state, you can get into these areas, but you're not going to drive in. You gotta walk, and you just got to be really paying attention to onX,
Sure.
to keep track of where you're at on public versus private, because sometimes there's not even a fence,
Mhm.
it's literally just unmarked. And, it's a little hillier country, and sure enough, I was right at the border of my unit, and, where I parked and got out to start walking. As soon as I crest that first little hill, and I'm not even in my unit yet, I'm going to drop down into this little drainage, and at the bottom of the drainage, that's where my unit starts, and there's a herd of antelope there 50 yards inside my unit, but a couple of does spotted me when I crested the hill. Of course, I dropped down. I'm like, oh, wow, there was a half decent buck in there. He wasn't huge. Actually, there's about 4 bucks in there, but one was half decent. And as I'm getting set up, for whatever reason, those does that got nervous, maybe they knew what unit they're in, because instead of running away from me, they literally brought that herd towards me.
Yeah.
They ran by like 100 yards away from me, but not in my unit.
Yeah.
I watched them pass me, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll look for something else. And then I'm kind of keeping tabs on them, and they literally circled all the way around behind me, ended up over by where I'd parked, saw my truck, probably got scared from my truck, and then ran back into the unit, and I watched them basically, go across the creek into my unit and then go up and over the next ridge. And I'm like, okay, well, sweet. I'll just follow them up and over that ridge, and they're probably going to be in the next little drainage, and there's a big, huge chunk of BLM land there.
Yeah.
And then kind of the other side of me is like, you know what? It's not always that simple. I bet there's a sentry. And sure enough, I started glassing that ridge line, and sure enough, there's still 2 doe heads sticking over that ridge line. Like, they're still nervous enough about me that a couple of them stayed back to watch.
Yeah.
So I just kind of sat there, and it probably took about 30 minutes before those 2 does disappeared. So I'm like, okay, they've relaxed again.
I wonder, like, we've seen that a couple times.
Yeah.
And again, some guys are like, oh yeah, duh, it's obvious. But to me, that was super interesting that I saw it with Aoudad.
Yeah.
I've seen it now with Antelope. You've seen it with Antelope.
Yeah.
It's like the sentry thing is a real thing.
Oh, it's a real thing.
And the Antelope had seen you and kind of maybe 1 or 2 stayed back and checking.
Yeah.
When you and I were looking for Aoudad, remember there was a small ram that would just be poking around on a rock looking at us before we got into the big hole.
See like half his head.
Yeah. So it's a real thing that they it's like one of you youngsters going out there covering our
Wouldn't you
six.
be a sentry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just cool.
Yeah.
And I wonder what animals do that, what animals don't,
Yeah.
But,
I think your herd animals definitely do.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I think I've heard people talk about it with elk, like cow elk.
Yeah.
I've certainly seen it with antelope, and with Aoudad. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the cow thing I've heard with, I'm not a seasoned elk hunter. I've been on a handful, and I've lived here for about 5 years now, and every year I've gone with customers and stuff. But so I'm starting to get, learn some of this stuff. But one of it was just the lead cow, they all watch her, and where her head turns, they all turn. When she stands up, they all stand up. Again, obvious for a lot of you guys. For me, I was like, man, this is super interesting. And
there's such a hierarchy within the herd.
Yeah.
That we just barely understand. It's pretty cool to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other point was with the antelope doing that circle. That's something I've learned too, is that you spook some antelope or maybe even miss a shot, don't give up on it, because they may literally just run a 360 on you.
Yeah.
Or run right at you, like you're talking about. I've witnessed that probably 3 or 4 times now down in New Mexico, where they run to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it because they see you and they're meaning to run to you, or they're running away from the smack in the dirt behind them? I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
or maybe they run away from that sonic crack.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from.
So anyway, don't give up on it is kind of what I've seen with antelope. Okay, so anyway, you've seen these 2, you're waiting for them you're giving them a second to.
Yeah, so I just sat there, waited for them to disappear. As soon as they disappeared, I had to kind of do a little dog leg to dodge a little bit of private line that was between us, and I had to, get onto some state and circle around, then get back onto the BLM. And, so I come over that crest, and sure enough, they're like the whole herd's down in the next drainage down below me, about 450 yards away, and I'm looking at Onyx, and it's like they are really close to some public or some private land. And, and this is the other place where Onyx really helped me out on that, because I'm sitting there, I'm lasing them, and I'm getting 470 yards on this buck. And then I'm doing the line draw, and I'm drawing a line from my position to the boundary of the private, and I'm getting 550 yards. And it is literally like, okay, he is, and I did it a couple times, and I'm like, okay, he is 70 yards inside, public land.
Yeah. And you just had a landmark that you could put that line distance to?
Well, I was putting it to the boundary.
Oh, yeah, to the boundary.
I was putting it to the boundary because there was no visible boundary out there that I could see.
Yeah.
There wasn't even a fence. So it's an invisible line.
Yep.
That without Onyx, it'd have been real easy to make a mistake and end up on, private land there.
And Onyx seems, they seem pretty accurate. Like how good can you be? I don't know, but man, there's some tricky stuff where it's like, you're on a curve of a road, and then you're on a corner of, let's say, private land, but it's a main road, a public road. And that corner, like, it's on the other side of the corner is public. And you're like, there's absolutely no way that there's this 60-foot triangle of private on the other side of the road jetting into that public.
Yeah.
There's no way. It has to be public as well, right?
Yeah.
But then you see it where there's a corner like that, and a private drive goes through that just tiny little 60-foot corner.
Yeah.
And I've called a game warden and been like, hey, like, this has got to be public, right? Like, I can cross that road. And he's like, no, you're crossing public or private.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck? Like,
just a little strip.
Yeah. So, how accurate is it? I don't know, and you can't make assumptions. You really have to go off of that line. And then I don't know, do you have an argument there if you...
Yeah. I think you at least have a good faith argument. I'm no attorney, obviously, And, I think the limitations might, in my mind, if something was off with that, it would have been how accurate is the GPS showing me exactly where I am? Because I'm basing everything up on, okay, Onyx says I am here, and the boundary is here. That's 550 yards. My laser rangefinder is telling me that the Antelope's only 470 yards. Therefore, but if my location isn't quite where the GPS says it is, there could be an error there.
Sure. Yeah.
But anyway, so I went ahead and shot him. Nothing. Just 470 yards, dropped him.
Kneeling, standing, or kneeling prone, or
just prone over the top of the ridge. So
yeah.
Easy shot.
Yeah.
And but when I was walking out there, I'm looking at Onyx, and I'm watching that property line getting closer and closer. And I'll be honest, I was starting to question myself a little bit. Yeah. But sure enough, I was a little less than 100 yards from the boundary.
So when you got up to him, because sometimes there's a lag in it too.
Yeah.
So you got up to him, and then it was like, okay.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, as I was walking up,
you started getting
seemed like that private boundary was getting close really quick.
Yeah.
But no, so the lessons I took from that is, when they're pressured like that, is you got to go to those places that are difficult to get into, or people are less likely to go, because there was nothing over where kind of the masses were going.
Yeah. No 2-track stuff and everything you're saying, like you had.
Yeah. And just to get in there, you had to be willing to walk, because all the 2 tracks were on public or on private.
Yeah. Huh, cool.
So it was actually like probably almost a 1.5 mile pack out for an antelope.
Yeah.
This isn't something you do too often.
Yeah. Even you saying that you went to a spot to glass, like sometimes that's rare antelope out here. Sometimes you're just driving the road and then you see a group of them. Yeah. But anyway, that's why I love antelope hunting, is it brings me back to old Nebraska road hunting, right?
Yeah.
No, that's kind of how mine went too, and we'll get to that in a second, my antelope hunt, but it was actually my buddies. But then you had the third one. You had an elk hunt, right?
Yeah. So, one of the really cool things about Gunworks, and sometimes they do it by kind of a lottery system. Sometimes they'll just like, okay, you've been here long enough, we're gonna give you this.
Mm-hmm.
Is we have miscellaneous hunts going on all the time, and sometimes just to check out a different ranch. In the case of the self tag I got this year, it was literally so we could familiarize ourselves with a ranch that we might have a relationship with in the future.
Sure.
And so 5 of us pulled this elk tag. I'll just say it's kind of in the central Wyoming Bighorn region. And while I was in Alaska, the guys went down there for the archery season, and the archery season there was freaking epic. It was, even though it was hot and the rut didn't really happen, there was still just bulls everywhere. So the guys that came out of there from the archery were like, man, this is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I was all amped up, like, man, this is going to be great. And we got a little snow, and right before we went down there, and just kind of the windows that we could work with our schedule and their schedule, we're kind of getting towards late October by the time we went down there. And we're up about between 7,000 and 8,000 feet. And we got there, and basically you could just tell the elk had left.
Sure.
They had all kind of headed downhill, and they're all kind of down on, some of your more agricultural land and stuff like that. We're kind of committed to this high altitude hunt, so we did it for, 5 days, I think. And honestly, we weren't seeing that much. We were seeing small raghorn bulls. We're seeing a couple a day, not a lot of elk. The herds were pretty much gone, so it was pretty much just the straggler bulls still. One of the guys that was with us saw one big mature bull, and that was the only mature bull we saw out of all of us. And so what I figured was probably going to be my last night there. And I was pretty set on I'm not shooting something small, so I'm going to be honest here, I got duped just a little bit. And so the way you're hunting, let me back up a little bit. The way you're hunting there, you're just trying to maximize your time. But if you know anything about like late season bull elk hunting, they'll come out at first and last light and feed a little bit, and we had a full moon that was working against us, so we weren't seeing much in the mornings at all. And most everything we're seeing like that last hour of light. So during the middle of the day, rather than sitting around the cabin, we're still hunting through timber. Unfortunately it was wet, so we can move quietly, and we're just trying to do stuff to maximize our chances. So I had this drainage with some a lot of timber edges and some openings there on the last evening, and I'm just sitting there, and probably about half an hour before dark, just because I wasn't seeing anything where I was at, I decided to slowly start working my way back to where I was going to get picked up by the other people we were hunting with, just so I could see more country. Well, they're not out here, maybe if I go around the corner, maybe they're out there, kind of mentality. And literally I get down to like 5 minutes of shooting light left, and I do kind of like that last look back over what I just left, and I see a bull come out of the dark timber, right about 500 yards. And I'm looking at him from the front, and it's getting dark, and I can see that he's pretty tall and he's pretty wide, not trophy quality, but certainly bigger than anything I'd seen. So I just kind of make up my mind. I was like, you know what, I'm shooting this bull.
Yeah.
It's going to be meat anyway. Yeah. And so I lays him. He turns, get him at like 470, I think it was. And I'm always reminded how tough elk are, because I hit him twice in the same high shoulder shot. He never went down. He turned and started going back towards the timber. Then I hit him a third time.
Dang.
And that third shot spined him and it dropped him, but it still took a couple minutes before his head went down. But yeah, when I got up to him, and I think a lot of it was so dry this year. He had a pretty big frame, but man, his points were stubby. Yeah. And he's a scrapper. A few of them are broken off, and he's a 5x5.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But what? It's good meat, and the weather's about perfect for hanging meat right now.
Sure.
So I think I'm going to get some really good meat out of this guy, because I'll probably butcher him in the next couple of days, and he's been hanging for a week now.
Yeah, heck yeah. You let him hang for a week. That's kind of your thing. You do that.
Yeah, like the cow elk I shot last year, she was tough, and she dropped instantly. And what I really attribute that to was it was below zero the day I shot her, and so the half of her that I packed out, that froze overnight in the back of my truck. I didn't have a warm place to put it. And then the half that I left there was frozen by the time I got back to get it the next day. So that meat never hung. It just went from alive to frozen a few hours later. And then it stayed frozen until I brought it inside and thawed it out to butcher it, and then it got frozen again. So it never got to hang and age. And she was pretty tough. Yeah. So I kind of think that that's the difference. I'll report back in a year.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how this one was.
I've done both, and I've, reading up and listened to some podcasts and stuff that talk about it. They always say that's the right thing to do. Is let them age for a couple days or a couple weeks, even sometimes. Man, I think I've done that, out of the last probably 10 animals I've killed probably twice. Yeah. Otherwise it's just like get it home and get it done, get the butchering done. But I don't really have a great place to hang them either, because my garage gets pretty heated in there. And then, so, but, the idea behind that is that the rigor mortis sets in, and then what is it?
And it starts to break down the muscle tissue. Yeah. I mean, your bacteria starts to break down the muscle tissue, so your best meat is a little ways down the path of being spoiled. Now, you let it go too far, obviously it's spoiled.
Sure.
But I think back to when I was a kid when we didn't even have refrigerators. So, if we killed a moose in mid-September, you're just going to hang it and it's going to hang until it freezes, and that might be October before it freezes. So I can think of moose that I know hung for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep them dry, I think that's the main thing. If it's raining and it's humid and it's moist out, then they'll spoil pretty quick. But man, if you can keep them dry, they can hang for a long time.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I might need to change some stuff up. We do, a lot of just burger stuff. But I definitely have noticed, you guys are going to hate me. It's because I'm doing it wrong, I'm sure. But a lot of the just like pot roast type stuff, man, with elk, I'm just like, oh, this thing's so dang dry. Even 8 hours on a crock pot and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe it's that. I don't know.
It's a never-ending search.
Yeah. But you said something. You were using a BDC turret, and I remember you were saying something that it was like foggy or something.
Oh,
you were using.
Yeah, that was actually it didn't actually end up contributing to the elk that I killed, But there was a couple days when I was hunting with one of our other guys here, and we would get this mountain, like basically clouds that would roll in.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see for 50 feet, and then they kind of dissipate a little bit, then they come back in, And we're sitting there one night, and literally, it's one of those nights where you're like kind of questioning why you're even out there.
Yeah.
Because we're basically just went out for our evening hunt, assuming that it's going to clear up, and because we couldn't see 100 yards, so we're sitting there, can't see 100 yards, and occasionally it cleared just a little bit where I could just kind of see the shadows of a tree line a couple 100 yards away, and maybe see the shadow of a top of a ridge, and I'm trying to laze it, and I can't get ranges. It's like, the BR4 is in farm mode is pretty good at cutting through fog and snow, but there's still a limit to how much of that stuff you can cut through. And I've never seen a BR4 give me a reading of 8 yards before, but I got a reading of 8 yards trying to range through a bunch of fog. But what I was doing is I was doing the same thing with Onyx, is I was just drawing lines to terrain features. So I kind of already knew, like, this tree line over here is 250 yards, the next one up is 350. The top of that ridge is 400.
So, like, if it would clear enough that you could see, or you'd been there before and you kind of knew this ridge was out there?
I'm just looking at, like, the satellite view around me.
Okay.
And I'd seen it outside of the fog, so I know what it looks like.
Sure, yeah.
But I was literally drawing ranges, and it just so happened, and Jason was going to be the first shooter if something came out that day. And it just kind of starts to clear a little bit, and I look up on this hillside, and there's 2 bulls standing there.
No,
like, Jason, 2 bulls. And I'm like, they're 350, because I already knew it. And I already knew that they're 350, just from having drawn the lines to that spot there.
Yeah.
We kind of turned around and got on them. And where we were sitting was kind of out in the open, because when it's foggy, you're like, I'm not going to see us.
Yeah.
Later, we're like, why were we sitting there? We were pretty exposed, because as soon as we started moving, they picked up on us.
Sure.
But none of them were trophy quality, so Jason passed on them anyway. He definitely could have shot one of them.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was interesting. It was definitely another strong argument for a BDC as opposed to just Minnesota angle, because I already knew on those closer ranges, is it 350 or is it 375? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's 350.
What that actually reminds me of is, if you get bored with hearing military stuff, sorry to the audience, but it reminds me of when we first got into a sniper platoon, one of the first things they would tell us is stay busy.
Yeah.
And so you're not just sitting in a hide site, just know, munching on whatever, cereal or whatever you brought out there. It's you're doing map work, you're finding bridges, you're finding main travel routes, and you're plotting points for mortars and escape routes, and if this happens, then I'm gonna do this, etc. So it was a constant reporting and a constant sketchbook type stuff, and that's what that reminds me of. It's kind of like, whether that transferred from that or what, but you're staying busy in a time of
there's nothing
you can't do anything. You can do something. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. I'd stay busy doing that, or like, wow, that drainage we were in this morning, I wonder what that looks like. You start looking at that on Onyx, and like, it's like my mind needs something to keep. Like if I can sit there behind binoculars and look for stuff, I'm completely fine doing that for hours. Yeah. But man, if I'm just sitting looking at the same thing for something to come out, like my mind needs something to keep it busy. So
it's not out of discipline. It's out of
it's out of boredom.
Bored.
And I probably already ate all my snacks.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, well, so moose, antelope, and elk. Those are and you got, what, a cow tag this year or no? No
I have
tag?
cow tag, but I won't fill it.
Oh, yeah,
I've got
no time.
I've got enough elk meat, so I'm good.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's kind of like that last chance. You strike out all season. Well, I've got a cow tag in December, so.
Yeah, I got you.
But no, I won't. I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah. Well, now it's kind of switching around, and it's kind of just going over a couple little things that I've been doing.
So let's. Like so you were. The reason I didn't see you for a long time because number one, you're in New Mexico doing the Gunworks antelope hunts.
Yep.
And then you just did the sniper competition.
Yep.
Or actually, you helped run this sniper competition, and then I know you had an antelope hunt yourself. So let's start with New Mexico.
Yeah. First, I would just want to say something where you said you helped run the sniper competition. I helped judge some stages. There's guys who had been there and done so much.
Gotcha.
So I don't want to give myself that credit that I helped run it, but I helped with it. But
yeah, kind of like an invited guest every year, right?
Yeah. That's basically. So New Mexico is myself and Jeremy, and then a couple of sales teams guys, and then, gosh, I should throw Gigi. Angela is her name. She's a gal who has done a lot at Gunworks. She's done stock work because she's a professional painter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not exactly what she does now.
Production quality now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a lot. She's doing a lot of computer work stuff out on the production floor, so it's too complicated for me. But she's dang busy. But every year when we go to New Mexico, we try to. Number one, we need the help. It's selfish reasons. We need the help down there because it's 14 people in a class.
Yeah.
And then, so we try to grab a couple guys from production or somewhere where you can just tell it's like, man, let's get some people out of
let's rescue somebody from the building.
For
a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And so I think it's good for both of us, right?
Yeah.
So Gigi came down, and she did awesome. Was great, and we laughed about this because the guys show up and we're like, all right, go to your cabins. We'll see you at supper. And it's not really this welcoming thing. A lot of our other venues, we're in the same building. We stay and sleep in the same lodge or whatever. So it's kind of this nice welcome.
And the lodge usually has like a hostess or somebody, somebody that handles the welcoming.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gigi, from the first class when Brian was down there, immediately was like, basically like, you guys are just roughing and gruffing it with these guys. You need to have someone there to say hey. And so anyway, she came up with a gift bag idea and really a welcoming kind of hosting type of thing. And so she was a huge benefit for us down there. And so was everyone else that was involved. But anyway, so group of us went down to New Mexico. The class for the second course that we do down there is train up, where it is 2 days of
the field
marksmanship. And you're doing tripod shooting. You're doing a lot of dummy rounds. It's basically just the type of scenarios that you're going to be facing out there, which is a lot of tripod shooting. We tell the guys, hey, I bet 80%, maybe not quite that high, but at least 50% of the antelope killed down there are from tripods.
Oh, for sure. I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, rolling hills and sometimes you get lucky, but usually tripod stuff. So anyway, lots of tripod work. And then halfway through the second day, they get out their own rifles and we do tripod work with their own rifles and stuff once we make sure that their data's good.
Yeah.
And so awesome, super fun, great group. We had 2 different groups. Both were phenomenal, fun people. But then we go out and kill antelope.
Yeah.
And it's always a great time. We always joke around. It's Western down there just because antelope hunting with 14 people, it gets Western.
Well, especially during the rut.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why that tripod work is so important, and that kind of get out and set up, being able to set up quickly. Yeah, because chasing them during the rut, it's like getting a buck to stand still for 5 seconds for a shot is difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was down there in August, we get set up on them and wait an hour for them to stand up. You can't get them to stand still for 5 seconds.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When you're talking long range shots, which a lot of those were long range because the does are getting chased around by these bucks, and then they're seeing us and they're running off, and the buck's trying to stop them and bring them back. So it's kind of like, there's my opportunity. It's gone. Oh, now it's back.
Yeah.
He's especially when it's this long range stuff. It's like you can't shoot an 800-yard shot in a quick moment.
Yeah.
You need a second to get set up. You need a second to look at different ranges for a wind call,
et
cetera. So you you kind of got to go in there knowing and having a little bit of experience that like I can't just get down and wing a 800-yard shot real quick, you know. And so we were having a lot of those experiences and then having to hold off and wait, and they'd leave and then go find another spot, go find more antelope or whatnot. But I would say I think I went hunting with a father, son. It was his 2 sons, and all 3 of them shot from the tripod. One shot his from the standing tripod at about 450, I think it was. Another one shot his from the kneeling at, I can't remember if it was, I think it was 780 from the kneeling tripod.
Wow. Yeah.
And that kid could shoot.
Yeah.
And had this one, this antelope was standing still, had plenty of time to get a wind call. And that kid, I've seen him shoot all day at the range, and it was awesome. So we had some trust in that, and man, he smoked his. And then the dad shot his from the standing at, I think it was like 160, 180, somewhere in there. But the funny thing was and then, you know, I'll talk about one more hunt there, and then we'll move on. But that dad, and then the next class I hunted with another guy, both of them, the antelope came to us, and it was, you know, that whole thing of the sons were making fun of their dad for the shirt he was wearing. They're like, "You idiot, you're wearing this like gray, almost white long sleeve," you know, and they're wearing camo Sitka stuff, you know, and they're giving their dad crap, and their dad's giving them crap back, you know. And we get out there, and you know, we had bumped some antelope, and we kind of skirt around this kind of, you know, lava rock pile kind of thing to see if we could cut them off, and you know, hopefully be within 400 is kind of where we were thinking we'd be. And boom, there they were to the right of us at like 320. Like they pulled a fast one on us. We're like, oh crap. So we get the tripod set up in the standing thinking they're going to bolt. And this buck just starts coming at us. Just like, I mean, laser eyes on us. Like he's like,
he's got his eyes on dad.
Yeah, that's what it was. I mean, that's the only thing I think of, you know, and the guide even said, he's like, everyone get behind him. He sees his shirt, you know, kind of thing. So we all mama duck, you know, behind him, and I'm getting the camera and stuff set up behind him and thinking if there's going to be a wind call. But he runs all the way into that, whatever it was, I can't remember, 200, 180, somewhere in there. And he gets this standing shot, just frontal, boom, just nails him and drops him, you know. And then it was just laughing, you know. And by the end of it, we get up there and we get, you know, one of us dares the other one to eat a piece of the liver, tear out the liver and eat it. And, you know, one son's giving the other son crap saying you're a wuss if you don't do it, you know. And so he bites it, and then we're like, now it's your turn. And so, you know, and we're like, hey, it's there's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's fresh, it's clean, you'll be fine. And then as soon as they eat it, we're like, I can't believe you did that. You guys are going to be sick. Just to scare them.
Give them grief.
Yeah. But anyway, so all 3, that was super special to be part of for me. Yeah. That I got to hunt with all 3 of them, and they were
cool.
I mean, this is the funny thing is the kids one was I think he was maybe 1 year out of high school, and the other one was maybe a junior or senior.
Okay.
And as we're stalking antelope, you know, with like at a couple points we're carrying that cow dump. Yeah. Or what do they call that? Decoy. And they call her old Betsy. And we're stalking behind that thing, you know, antelope at 500 yards. Yeah. And it's the guide, the dad. And this is too many people, but we were having fun. And there's so many antelope out there that, you know, if we don't get this one, we'll find another one. So it is mama ducking it. Yeah. And I'm in the very back, and it's guide, dad, son, me. And these sons are like tripping each other, shoving each other into holes, stuff like that on the way out stalking an antelope. You know, they're just having a blast. So it was super fun. The dad turned around and be like, shut up, you know. And but super fun. They all killed. It was a ton of fun. So then the next one, it was a crazy windy day. Mm-hmm. The next class that came in. So the first day of the hunt was crazy windy. And so the hunter had missed a couple shots that were, you know, 600-ish, you know, and I don't blame him. I'm like, dude, like, we got to get close to be able to shoot something in this wind. And so I was going to go with him on Sunday. So I wasn't with him on Saturday, but I was like, I'll go with you on Sunday, and I'll help with wind calls and you know, see what happens. And sure enough, Sunday was windy as crap again, you know. So the guide does a perfect job of finding us a big antelope, and it's right, I call it a chocolate drop hill. Okay. It's kind of a lava rock hill that was, you know, I mean, it's pretty dang tall. You almost would call it a mountain, but, you know, to drive around it would probably take you 15 minutes type of thing. And he sees his antelope kind of on the base of that. So we drive behind this chocolate drop hill, and we start kind of cresting, kind of side hilling it. And the guide gets us in a perfect spot to where I want to say it was 560, 580, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
He's this buck just, moving these does. And he even sees us at a certain point when we're kind of getting set up, but we're in the prone, and he gets to 530 yards. And the end of the story is I blew a wind call. So, and I'll absolutely take responsibility for it. It's like, no matter how cocky I get or how confident I get in my wind calls, something will humble me. Every hunting season, something happens. And I felt awful because it was like, man, I'm going to be your saving grace. I'm going to go out there and get this antelope for you, kind of thing. Or not get it for you, but get the perfect wind call.
Yeah.
So he's trusting me, and I could tell his mood is kind of like, man, I already missed a couple, and so I'm like, hey, we got this, man. So we get up there prone, 530, somewhere in there. And I'm doing this, the wind call for him, and basically I call about a 3-minute left fold at 500. I mean, that's 15 inches. Yeah, that's a lot of wind. But I knew there was a wind from left to right, kind of at our back as we're getting in position for this. But by the time we get set up, there's like no wind at us, Yeah. And I've even got the phone scope. Everything's perfect on the Olin, and everything's just perfect. And it's like, this is going to be great. He's going to have a great video of this and everything. And I'm looking down there at the grass, and the grass doesn't look that bad. It's blowing left to right, but not a ton. I was being pretty bold with the wind call. I was like, man, like 3 minutes, like that's putting him just off the front edge of him, basically, And he takes his shot, and it lands right behind his butt, So immediately I'm like, gosh dang it, I just blew it, And a nice buck,
So what was the correct wind call?
It would have been 6 to 7 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I missed it by double what it, that was such a bad wind call.
Yeah.
And it was what it's like what I didn't think about, or, can you teach this? I don't know.
Probably that wind velocity profile.
So
you're shooting from a ridge across some dead space.
But yes, but it's this chocolate drop, right? So I'm feeling it left to right as we're kind of curling around this mountain.
Okay.
But kind of at my back as well. So I'm thinking it's probably from the other side is hitting this mountain and swinging around, swinging around this bottom part of this chocolate drop.
Yeah. So,
and a little bit of that too, but still I thought I was being bold.
Yeah.
But it was so bad, such a bad wind call. Anyway.
Unless you held the wrong way.
Yeah.
There's always that chance.
You know what? That's sometimes like, let's see if I can give me something back. But I think he held the right way. And I just had a bad wind call. It was windy as crap, but when we got set up, it just didn't feel that way. But anyway, he bumps around kind of the other side. We were able to just crest around the other side and get set up on him at 400 yards. And we're like, money. Now we got him. I'm gonna give a bolder wind call. And then 2 coyotes come out and chase him.
Oh, man.
We're like, are you freaking kidding me? 2 coyotes. And we about blasted the coyote. We're like, this might have blown our hunt, but it was early in the day. We'll find another one or find him again. So anyway, he busts out. We curl around, find him again. The same spot that the dad shot his from the standing. Same spot. We find this antelope again. He's kind of amidst some cows, and we're like, perfect. We're getting old Betsy out again.
Yeah.
Get old Betsy out, and we, from the standing, same deal, comes running right at us. And anyway, he shoots this thing. I think it was like 110, 120 yards.
Yeah.
Just crushes it, But it's just funny because your long range stuff, you're going to a long range school, and half these antelope that you're killing, in the rut, are tripod standing 400 and in.
Yeah.
So anyway, the class of tripod shooting, this is what I love to see. Mm-hmm. Some of the classes previously, we didn't do a lot of tripod stuff.
Yeah.
And you see guys struggle with tripod shooting. The guys that I hunted with, these 4 guys, every single one of them used the tripod, and every single one of them knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And the partner that was with them, whether it was their son or myself or the guide, knew how to help them get set up and put some a tripod in the rear for a rear support, stuff like that. So anyway, it really showed the fruits of our labor teaching the tripod and the field marksmanship class going over to the field. So anyway, that was super cool. Then the sniper comp was the next thing.
Yeah.
So unless there's anything you want, is there anything else on the antelope hunt that you wanted to cover?
No, I think that pretty much covered it. It's a cool event every year. I always have a lot of fun doing that. We kind of rotate who goes for which season.
Yeah.
But so after that, did you do Sniper, actually, you did your antelope hunt next, right?
Antelope hunt was next, yeah. And it was actually a buddy from my platoon. Him and I did the in-dock together.
Okay.
So it's great because, I put in one of my points that I wanted to talk about is shooting or hunting with someone that's capable is the wrong word, because everyone can be capable of pressing the trigger and making a good shot. But that is kind of in your same realm of experience and
like the communication goes really good when you have that common background and you've worked together before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the second year in a row now that we've hunted together. And the cool thing was he said he hadn't shot a bolt gun for 8 years, I think it was, since he got out of the Marines.
Yeah.
And he said does electrician work and stuff like that now. And anyway, so he comes up here. He's got a nice 308, of course.
Yeah.
And immediately I saw on the range that like his communication was the same. He had never lost it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I really appreciate about the Marine Corps, the Scout Sniper program, is that it is so disciplined that it stays with you for a long time, but there's the fluff in between and all the crap that you don't need to be said. Like he was just like only what needed to be said.
Very concise.
It was awesome. So it felt like we were, back in the gang.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he had an antelope tag, a pretty high draw, which means that there's going to be a lot of hunters there, obviously, for non-resident. And I remember him calling me and telling me he drew, and I was like, cool, let's look at this unit. And I look at it, I'm like, oh man, this is pretty checkerboardy, and no roads to go to that, so we're not going to be able to go to that one, et cetera, et cetera, but there's a couple spots. So we drive down there and just take the first day to hit every spot we can hit, just to kind of see what we're working with. And it's along the interstate. So the most antelope we saw, we're driving on the interstate to get onto the land to go try and look for them. It's just them crossing over private land and then just barely crossing public checkerboards onto the next private land.
Yeah.
So the whole first day, it was not seeing a lot, but what we saw was on private.
Yeah.
So we did the whole classic, look these guys up, see if we can call them and get permission. It's like they've heard it 100 times, so this is stupid, but and never got any calls back. So second day, that night we're like, we have to ambush. Like that's the only way to do this. There's so many hunters out here. We just have to drive roads and hopefully something crosses into public land and ambush them.
Yeah.
And so we're on a square that's probably 200 acres.
Yeah.
And we saw 4 bucks just on private land the evening before. So we're like, let's just go back there, see if one of them wanders back in. And sure enough, we park and hop the fence and hike up 100 yards up on this little knoll, and we're just glassing. We see a buck right into private land again. We're like, gosh dang it, that's one of those 3 or 4, whatever it was. And we're just glassing for a little bit, and boom, we see one that had wandered in.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, sweet. So we decided it wasn't a monster.
Yeah.
It was like, dude, you spent $400 for this tag.
Yeah.
Drove all the way up here kind of thing. He was doing this mental game.
He's thinking that.
Yeah. And he's asking me like, what do you think, man? I'm like, I told him the truth. I'm like, hey, this is not a monster. And I don't want to make a decision for you, but this is what I'll tell you. Cause it's true, whether it's a doe or a freaking monster, is if you make a good stock on something and you get in position and make a good wind call, and I'm going to try and get it on camera, like it'll be an awesome experience.
Yeah.
And I was basically telling him what he wanted to hear, but I believed it too, So he's like, okay, perfect. We're going after it. So that was what was cool though, was like being with this guy for 5 years in the Marines, and like, we kind of knew each other and don't step on each other's toes, and not that we're afraid to, but just like, we know it's his hunt, that type of thing. We back off the hill, go around, get along this barbed wire fence, which is the borderline, and cut this thing off, as he's kind of wandering. He sees, we get set up at 640 yards. I mean, we did not quite a skull drag, but crawling slow for about 400 or 500 yards.
And this is 640, 308 yards.
Yes. That's right.
That's completely different than our usual 640 yards.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we get set up in the prone, and here's the stupid thing, and you never want to be this guy, but we get set up on him, and I'm looking for my phone to videotape, and my phone's gone. And I'm like, target indicator, it's back on that slug trail somewhere up the hill. So I'm like, dude, we got him a wind call dialed in, everything. I'm like, you shoot if you need to shoot, but I'm going to go back and try and get my phone so I can record this. So I crawl all the way back, and it's right where we had started, basically.
Yeah.
Get it, crawl all the way back. Anyway, get everything on film, and he's lays in this thing, and he's getting 670 yards. And I'm like, I'm going to double check and stuff on, on mine. Let me get some. So we get a lot of lasers going on because he was bedded, didn't see us at this point. I'm getting 640.
Yeah.
And with my BR4, and I'm like, let me try my binos too, the BLR 10Bs, lays it 641. I'm like, dude, like I know my rangefinder's on. Like I checked to see if there's any offset. Let me see your rangefinder, and take his rangefinder. And what I ended up doing was, because we're getting a longer range, we expect that the offset is the beam is higher than the reticle. Yeah. So what I did was I was like, man, I don't have anything to laze underneath.
Yeah.
So I turned it upside down and I lazed the skyline, and there's a hill at about 800 yards away. So it's upside down rangefinder, and I'm lazing the skyline, and I'm dragging it down until I start getting 800. And I was getting 800 way before, almost a full reticle.
Yeah.
Like circle up, well, at this point would be below because the rangefinder's upside down, the reticle. And so I'm like, dude, there's an offset high.
Yeah.
And I check it on mine just to be sure. Mine's good. So it's like, sorry, man, but.
Yeah, you got to believe me.
Yeah, you got to believe me. And he's like, check it, double check it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we ended up putting a different dope on for the 640. And the key takeaway there, though, is we preach this.
Yeah, you got to check the zero of that laser beam with the reticle.
Yeah.
And then when you've checked it, check it again a month later. Yeah, because you dropped it. Things can happen where that thing is jolted out of alignment in there.
Yeah, it's like, what makes it do that? I and maybe, to me, you would think, I've got run over by a side-by-side. My rangefinder previously, a Vortex Ranger 1800, and I love that little rangefinder. But I think that's what offset my beam. And they'll replace it or fix it, but what is it that does that? Who knows?
Yeah.
So if you take a tumble, check it.
Yeah.
You throw your gear in you have this long hunt, horseback, whatever. It's like when you get back, you should probably check it again.
You buy a new one, even ours, check it.
Yeah.
Just so you know. And then obviously if it's not right, you return it.
Yeah. And if you have an offset, then at least if you have to use it for that hunt, you at least know where it is.
Yeah.
And the problem with his was so far up that
it's outside the reticle.
We couldn't use it.
Yeah, because usually I'll find that it's somewhere within the reticle, but it's good to know where in the reticle it is. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it might be, you could use the top edge of the reticle.
Yeah, and I know that that's actually where the beam exactly is. Or like in my binos, it's like the bottom third of the circle. I know that's where the beam is.
Sure.
And so that's what I use for my reticle is the bottom third of the circle.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so, his was so far that we couldn't use it. It's like, dude, I can't trust it. And he's like, well, what is it, 30 yards off? I'm like, it's not 30 yards off. It's the beam is offset, so it may be 200 yards off, depending on your backdrop.
And if you're hitting a hillside, you'd get the same reading as me.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we ended up, he got up, took off, like just wandered away from us. We never got a shot anyway. And we ended up going around a hill, kind of the same thing as the one from New Mexico, chocolate drop, cut him off. He sees us then. He does the, like, I'm curious type, kind of towards you, kind of away, checking back. And my buddy shoots him at 270, I think 270 something yards. But what I loved about that part was when we crested over and saw him, boom, he saw us, and it was like, now it's game on.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wasn't with someone that I was confident in, I would have been like, it's probably gone.
Yeah.
But knowing this guy who I'd worked with for 5 years, and I know this guy can shoot, I know he knows what to do. It was like tripod set up. He's moving away from us. He's on him. He moves, gets to a spot where we can't see him. We move again. Tripod's getting changed, and then immediately the antelope stops and he drops him. It was just like I didn't have to worry about him. I knew he had it. You know? And not to say that none of the guys we hunt with are like that, because there's a lot of guys that are just straight up killers.
Yeah.
But that's what Aaron always jokes. He's like, there's hunters and there's killers.
Yeah.
And Roach is my buddy in the sniper platoon, and
You get a name like Roach, you got to be a killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His name is Shad Roach.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it was at his bachelor party. The guy we introduced him to, who the fishing guide, he's like, wait, so your name is a fish and a bug? Yeah, from Kansas, old Shad Roach. But anyway, he's a killer. And so we had an absolute blast. And like, wasn't the biggest buck, but he was happy.
Awesome.
And I had a blast with him, such a cool thing to experience with him. But, yeah, I think the only other takeaway is the public land, how to hunt checkerboard stuff. And it's just tough. You can find 2 tracks that aren't on Onyx and stuff too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's probably created by somebody that just decided to go in there.
Yeah, it's debatable.
Yeah. Right. But a lot of the ambush stuff is kind of where it was at, and competing with other hunters, and that affects your decision making on what you're going to shoot and not. So you just have to be mentally prepared for what you're getting into when you go on these public hunts, especially with little access.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. So then I get back from that, and it was a quick turnaround and go over back to Nebraska for sniper competition. Yep. So RevTac, or Revolution Tactical, is a range in Nebraska. It's up in the northeast corner, almost by Sioux City, Iowa. And how I learned about that was I came back from the Marines. I was living at home before I got married, and I'm looking for a place to shoot. And I saw there's a range 30 minutes away. And so I call, and this guy, his name's Tim Grover, owns the range, owns RevTac. He's an Army sniper, and he basically said, hey, I snooped your profile. I see you're into long-range shooting, and maybe you should come do some instructing. But I want to meet you first, and you can shoot, but let's talk a little bit about that. So anyway, all went well, and I started instructing for him. That was before this job. And something that's really cool with Tim is he obviously has a heart for veterans and first responders, and he created something called Contact Front, which is a nonprofit to help out veterans and first responders. And he built a cabin on a pond with a little waterfall, and like just this awesome, he'll literally fly people out to stay there for free if they just need a break from life.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, he's helped guys get vehicles that couldn't afford vehicles. Just like an awesome program. But he had, and it kind of falls in line with this, but he had his sniper partner was Chris D. Horton. Chris D. for middle name, not Christy, but Chris D. Horton, and he was killed in Afghanistan. And so Tim, being the awesome person he is, was like, I don't want his legacy to die. So I'm going to create a sniper competition, and and it's called the Chris D. Horton Legacy Sniper Competition. Yeah. And so it's been going 4 years now. COVID ruined one of them where we couldn't run it. But basically, I mean, just out of stuff he had at the range, and then people and connections he had, and just calling people. I mean, got so many sponsors, bringing rifles in for price table stuff, spotting scopes, tripods, and the first year he ran it, crushed it. Yeah. And we had teams from all over the place. So now, last year I went back again too. So I've been to it every year. Last year, I think we had a couple Green Beret teams, a SEAL team, just people from Minnesota, from Oregon. Every year we have a couple teams from Oregon. So there's teams from all over. 22 teams last year. This year, a couple guys got hurt or sick or whatever, couldn't make it. There's only 15 teams this year. Yeah. Still, I mean, 30 competitors.
Yeah, that's a cool event,
man. And it's you're a shooter spotter pair. Yeah. So you're both running pistols. One guy runs an AR, one guy runs a long gun. Yeah. And they got to be 308 and they got to be 5.56. Yeah. Because guys were showing up with some crazy stuff.
Yeah, some crazy competition stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, they do stock lanes. Yeah. There's one of the stages, they brought in a new car, not a brand new car, but
a new trash car.
A new trash car for every team, because one of the stages you're shooting out the windshield and creating basically a loophole to shoot through to shoot these targets. They built a huge tower to get some like high angle stuff. It's like 5 stories high to get some like high angle shooting. You're over the Missouri River. Every year we've had a helicopter that they do helicopter shooting out of. It's an amazing event. And what I love about it is I get to stay involved in the community. Yep. And this is another thing I love about Gunworks is Gunworks has always allowed me to go back and to have Gunworks as a sponsor for this as well. So that says a lot about Gunworks, that to me that they give back and care about first responders and the military and stuff too. And so I always bring something for the price table. Again, just generous of Gunworks to allow us to do that. And some of the stuff is like these guys who are in the military who don't have that much money, some of the younger guys and whatnot, and they haven't seen a ballistic rangefinder before.
Yeah, they're still using Kestrels.
They're still using Kestrels and dope cards or have never looked through a nice spotting scope. They've got a cheap whatever crap, besides what they have issued to them.
Yeah.
But then they come out and a lot of times they're using personal stuff. And anyway, so it's pretty cool because then we supply them with something awesome and then they can usually are actually use in their units as well. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, I had a great time. I'm super blessed and thank Tim for letting me come back and be a judge. I'd be a judge for a couple different stages. And I think Gunworks for allowing me to go back and for us to be a sponsor. So I just think that's a super awesome event. Contact Front, RevTac, Chris D. Horton, Legacy Sniper Competition. Those are all things you can Google and look at their Facebook page, and there's some sweet pictures. I mean, they do crazy, crazy stages. You need to see some of this stuff. So
awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, glad to still be involved in the community and that stuff. So anyway, that's what I've been up to. Man, we've been talking a lot. Sorry, but he's been hunting a lot, and I've been busy all around here. And we've been doing a lot this off season. You guys, when we come back, they're always like, where are you guys at? You guys been hiding somewhere? It's like,
wow, we're busy.
Yeah, we're busy, and some of it's fun, right? But we're busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
it beats working for a living.
Absolutely.
That's what I always say.
Yeah.
It's like, this sure beats working for a living.
And the busy isn't done. We got some stuff coming up this weekend.
Yeah, because actually, so kind of along the same lines as the elk hunt I went on. Over the summer we had a raffle, throughout Gunworks for 15 cow elk hunts. And this is basically just it's a leftover tag draw, so it's 100% draw. You're gonna get the tag, and we got connections on a local ranch, where the cows migrate down to, and so starting this weekend, different groups of hunters every weekend, from Gunworks, going out there, and Gunworks actually paid this ranch, the trophy fee for their cows, and these employees could go on public land in the same unit, and find a cow with a little more work, but just
that's where I'm at.
The cool thing of being able to go hunting on this, on this ranch in this unit, and you had a company like Gunworks that's willing to front some money so that their employees have a cool hunting experience. Then they just raffle them off every year. So we're gonna have some guys, that just started here 6 months ago, right before the raffle, and we're gonna have some guys that have been here for 5 years.
Yeah.
So by doing that raffle thing, it's as fair as you can make it.
And Gunworks is a small company to where it's growing, but I've been here almost 5 years now, and I did an antelope tag, and I've got the cow elk tag this year, so I've drawn twice now.
Yeah.
And some guys haven't yet, right? But so the odds are in your favor.
Oh yeah, odds are in your favor that you're probably going to get, within a couple of years, you're going to get to do something cool. That's kind of sponsored by the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're going to do these cow elk hunts, and then you're going to Oregon here in what, a month? End
of the month. Yep, November 21st to the 25th. It's Chad Mendez's Fins and Feathers.
Yep.
And we go. It's Opal Butte Outfitters is the guys. Casey's kind of the main guy we deal with.
Great outfit, great accommodations.
Yeah, we go, basically the short end of it is we go up to Oregon and we teach a day and a half of kind of field marksmanship type stuff, and then go kill some cow elk. It's like the New Mexico class, but in Oregon and cow elk. And to me, that's just that's
and the really cool thing about this event, and the reason I bring this up is because there's still spots available, is you don't need a tag ahead of time. It's a landowner tag, so the price of admission includes the landowner tag. It includes all your meals, all your lodging, so it's a pretty cool event.
Yeah. And I think we've been doing it 3 years.
Yes.
3 years.
This will be the third year.
This is the third year, yeah. And I know Chad was there the first year, and then you went. Was he there when you went there?
Yeah, I was there last year.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope he's there again this year too. And I mean, he obviously wants to be there to kind of to support his brand and stuff too.
Yeah.
And man, he's a killer too.
Yeah.
Chad Mendez.
So anybody that's interested in it, it's Fins and Feathers, but it's spelled FINZ and Feathers FEATHERZ.com.
Yep.
And it's actually called the Cow Elk Academy. on his website.
Yeah, and we scrolled down it. It's towards the bottom of the page on the main page. If you're on a computer, if you're on your phone, you got to go to like trips or something like that and scroll down. But just to try and find it, see how many spots we had left on that too. And I think there's 2 spots left right now, but as of now, but that's just a dang blast. And the guides there, Casey's group and Chad and them, like awesome guys. I mean, I had a blast. And you're actually in a guy's house, but it's a lodge. Yeah. And him and his wife make supper, and like it feels homey.
It feels homey, but it's nice at the same time. And then you get your own private cabin with a restroom, so you kind of got your own little getaway space. But yeah, you got this really nice lodge, and it's a pretty cool experience. Yeah, and to kill cow elk. I mean, you didn't draw something, and you just need some meat this year. Like that's the perfect opportunity. So, I think so. The fins and feathers and the employee elk, and then well, I mean, we got some cow elk hunts, our own stuff that we do here too that are coming up. Maybe you already mentioned it and I just spaced it, but after the employee cow elk hunts. Oh, actually, yeah. So we got our own cow elk hunts, and so these are for non-residents, so they're on a tag draw. So you had to draw the tag back in June. So this is back in Cody. Yeah, Cody, Wyoming. Yeah, back in Cody. So as soon as we get done doing the employee stuff on this ranch, then we'll transition over to running customers, and so we'll do the same thing. We'll do that 2 days of training, field marksmanship training, be out in Burlington. Might be a little cold by then, but we got the nice, we got the garage bay doors, and we got the nice warm building we can go in and out of, and work on marksmanship for 2 days, and then go out and hunt elk for 2 days. Yep. It's the same kind of thing. It's a meat hunt, but like I said, it's too late for anyone this year, but obviously we're going to be running the same thing next year, and I think we're going to ramp this up to where we do bigger and bigger numbers every year. Yeah, and what I love about it is that it's right in our backyard. So you guys have been to Cody and love Cody. You're staying in Cody, hotel stuff, or your own lodging, but where we hunt is 20 minutes away. Yeah, it's a 20-minute drive to the parking lot where we start hunting from. Yeah, so that's going to be a blast. But besides that, we just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of Gunworked. Gunworked is kind of this photo contest that we do every year. It's a hashtag Gunworked. So if you're on Instagram or something and you post a picture, you can hashtag Gunworked, or what's the other thing? You can actually send it in to gunworks.com /Gunworked. Yeah. So just to, so it's gunworks.com /Gunworked, GUNWERKED. Yep. Just to make sure someone doesn't think it's Gunworks again. Yeah. And the parameter of the pictures, they can be grip and grins to. Yeah. So there's kind of 2 categories, and giving away 2 Nexus rifles, 1 for each category. And one of the categories is lifestyle. So you can have an unsuccessful hunt and still submit, because it's just, it's getting off the plane, it's trips about the, it's photos that show the adventure. Yeah. It's lifestyle. And then obviously the other category is your trophy photo. Yeah. So I guess you have to be successful to enter the second category, but you don't have to be successful to enter the first category. Yeah. So send in photos. We want to see them. Heck, if you're not sending them into there, you got some cool, kill shots or something like that, or, vapor trails or anything like that from your hunts, like send them to us. If you've been to our LRU, you've seen our emails and stuff. We love, as we joke, we live vicariously through the students. That is so true. Although we get to hunt too. Last couple of years have been pretty epic. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, my stories compared to some of the stories my students have to tell are 2 completely different things. I mean, these guys literally live like a awesome life. Yeah. We love to see the success. So please send it in to us, and don't forget about that Gunworked competition. Might as well get your name in for a possible rifle. So, well, I think that's it for this. We blabbed a lot, but man, we do have a lot of stuff going on in the off season. We call it the off season, but man, we're all over the place, and we're doing trade shows coming up here too. So hopefully we see some of you guys at the trade shows, and until next time. So thanks, Brian. You guys. Yep.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed, or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram, or send us an email to podcast@gunworks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunworks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.